I'm really doing something to help others. This is all a vision of love. This is all about a mission to make a difference in people's lives.
Welcome to Flip Your Script, the podcast about life's critical turning points and how people find the inspiration and motivation to move forward and rewrite their unique stories. Flip Your Script is produced by Media Minefield, a public relations firm passionate about the power of sharing stories. Specializing in earned and social media, Media Minefield helps clients take control of their unique story and message. The show is hosted by Kristi Piehl, founder and CEO of Media Minefield, who flipped her script from an Emmy-winning journalist to a successful entrepreneur and speaker.
Odds are you have been impacted by today's guest, even though you probably didn't realize it at the time. If you've ever eaten at an IHOP, Taco Bell, Applebee's, or Fogo de Chao restaurant, you've experienced some of Julia Stewart's mastery. She's held CEO and chair roles in the food industry and has now added entrepreneur to her resume. We're going to talk about her new venture in a minute. So how's this for a Flip Your Script story? Julia went from an IHOP waitress to CEO. Fortune magazine has even named her one of the 50 most powerful women in the United States. Welcome to the podcast, Julia.
Thank you.
Your career is in the food industry primarily, and you started as a waitress. So many people say everyone should work in retail or some kind of customer-facing role like waitressing. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think everyone should do it at least once. I truly believe serving others at some point in your life makes you appreciate the millions of people who serve every day, and they inspire you to say thank you and say it more often. In fact, I think that makes a huge difference, being able to say thank you. When I started in my career, and then I just kept it going for my entire career, I would never do a final interview unless it was in a restaurant. And what I was watching is to see how you responded to a food server. And if you were rude or disrespectful or didn't look them in the eye, I wouldn't hire you.
It's interesting you say that. I've worked in television news for a long time, and one of my general managers took me to a restaurant, and one of the things that the server did at this restaurant is she wrote her name on, paper and a crayon upside down. And he said to her, "Wow, it's so amazing that you can write your name upside down. Kristi, you do it." And I think part of it was just to see, how could I respond? And it was fine. It wasn't about how I wrote my name, but you learn a lot by how people treat strangers.
That's right. And this is make no mistake about it, the United States and globally, this is a world of people who serve. And if you learn to say please and thank you, it goes a long way, and you can often make someone's day and vice versa. So I'm a big believer. Yeah, absolutely.
When you were that IHOP waitress, what were your career aspirations at the time? Did you think that you would stay some fashion of food industry?
No, actually, I just tried to graduate from high school and get through the job. So I would say in the very beginning, no, it really was my first job in high school. And back then you wore the hat and the apron and the big cuffs, and you would take things around on a tray, and syrup came on a tray. But what I did walk away from that first job is it was with a franchisee of an IHOP restaurant in San Diego, where I grew up. And it was very interesting. It was a great culture, this notion of family and togetherness. And you did not leave your shift without talking to the manager about what you did right, what you did wrong. And so instantly, I loved the family culture. And I love this notion that I was getting daily feedback, either from guests or from, the management team. But I learned to call that gift. It was a real gift that you could get feedback every day about how you were doing and the difference you were making. That really stuck with me.
The other thing that really is a gift about working in that industry, I did it in high school as well, is when you leave the job at the end of the day, you leave. There's no taking it home with you. And as you rose in your career, you were taking work home with you. There was no getting away from it. But that being, customer facing, that's something that I think a lot of, students in high school or people in entry level jobs, they don't realize what a gift that is.
It is a gift. And I remember early on, my manager used to say to me, you can change someone's day. You can change them from being sad or unhappy or frustrated and with a smile or an engagement. Now you have to read the table, and that's an art. But once you read that table and you're able to have that dialogue, you can change someone's entire day. And for me, that was very inspirational.
And when you were rising the ranks in food services, I've read about you, what I could find about you, because you're tricky to find online. Google her, folks. There's some things out there, but it's tricky. You've controlled your message, which I really appreciate. So the things that people say about you often is you're a pioneer. You are one of the few women sitting at executive leadership roles in that industry. Were you really aware of that at the time? And did people treat you differently? Or I'm always fascinated because I think looking back on things, we have a different perspective than in the moment.
I think that's a great question and a very fair one. I think early on, it was all about getting greater experience and volunteering for the job that nobody wanted, taking risks that nobody wanted. So I moved a lot around the United States because I was always doing, frankly, the job that nobody wanted. So early on, it was all about learning and growing and demonstrating and learning more each and every time. So I think that was it early on. At some point, I realized, look, I really do want to run something. Who knew that it would end up being IHOP? But I really did want to run something. And my career had been first in marketing on the hospitality side, and then going into operations and then general management shit. And that was done intentionally because I knew I didn't think anybody would make me CEO if I stayed on the marketing side. So that was my first big sort of risk, right? I'll stay in marketing for 18 years. I'll raise my hand and say, I'll start all over at the bottom if I have to get into operations so I can learn the operating side of the business, manage a P&L, and eventually run something. And that is exactly what happened. But there was forethought. I think early on, there was sexual harassment and all of that was alive and well. And certainly I have stories just like everybody else in that era. I think as time went on and I became more successful and the titles got stronger, you didn't really see that. It was much more subtle. The Good Old Boys Network, alive and well, but much more subtle. But I think by the time I got to Taco Bell and I was running all of the franchise side of the business, yes, people were saying, we look up to you. You're an inspiration, make a difference, go out there and win. I would sometimes get notes underneath my door left at night saying, you give us hope, you give us courage. So yes, by the time I was really at a senior level, I knew that I was paving the way and paying it forward.
Did that weigh heavy on you? Or did you feel that that was just such a privilege?
No, I always thought it's a great question. I always thought it was a privilege. I thought it was a privilege to be able to lead. I think somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking of myself as anything other than I'm an executive with a job to do. I'm going to do it well. I'm going to mentor, coach, lead this team to greatness. And it became less about any of the other and more about just doing a great job.
You said something in the answer before that I want to circle back to because I think a lot of people listening can take something from it. You didn't let anyone else control your career. You knew where you wanted to go, and you were very strategic about determining what the next role would be, knowing that that likely would mean that you would have to go backwards, perhaps in title or in pay, but that you needed to do that to get to the end goal. Did you innately know that, or did you have a mentor or someone who was coaching you? Did you do a lot of reading? Because it's a very astute thing to do, especially someone who's newer in the workforce.
I think early on, I just watched all the people who were unsuccessful and said, I don't want to be like that. There really wasn't mentors in the day that you and I think of them today. It really wasn't like that. But along the way, I had friends, and certainly I had an executive recruiter who said to me, and I will never forget this, if you ever want to go all the way to the top, you're going to have to leave marketing and go into the operating side of the business so you can demonstrate that you can manage a P&L. And I think at the time people thought that was nuts, that I would leave this great job where I was successful and I'd won all these awards for great advertising, and I would go on the other side. So when I started with Taco Bell, they had a program called the Advanced Management Recruit. So I knew what I was getting myself into. And I started out as an assistant restaurant general manager at a Taco Bell with the keys and the bow tie and the uniform, working nights and weekends. And people shook their head at the corporation and said, well, this will never work. Somebody with a marketing background, how on earth could they possibly run a restaurant? And the rest, as they say, is history. I did that for a year and kept managing my way up, and then eventually ran the entire franchise organization for operations. But make no mistake about it, all along the way, there were certainly people who would have been happy to see me not be successful.
Of both genders, I suspect.
Absolutely.
So when you think about your career, and you've done so many things, and I have a couple of notes I want to mention, but what are you most proud of?
I would have to say I can't remember how much EBITDA or profit I made for any company, but I can pretty much remember everyone I promoted and everyone that grew under my tutelage. So I'm very proud of the number of people who went on to greatness that I was able to coach and mentor. I really am very proud of that fact, both men and women, young and old, who I coached and mentored and are still in touch today. And the same with the franchise community. There are many franchisees who I either took out of bankruptcy or helped them with their businesses. And I still get a holiday card or the like from them. And so I think it's the people that you help along the way. The pay it forward I mentioned earlier, that's the thing I'm probably most proud of.
And it really fits with where this whole interview started, which was, what do you get out of the service industry, the restaurant industry? And you said it's about serving other people and helping people. And you did that literally, can I help you? Can I take your order? To in executive leadership, how can I help you follow me and do more than you even think you could?
That's right. That's absolutely right. It's almost like a service leadership style where I got the job, I got the title. I don't need to worry about being the smartest person or the loudest person in the room. It's really to grow that talent underneath you. As I said earlier, it's a privilege to be able to lead. And if you really want to take advantage of it, then bring people along.
And based on what I can read about you, it sounds like you're also a little bit stealth. I don't know if that's true or not, but one of the things that I think is just so, I just want to stand up and give you a round of applause because I really love it, is that you thought that you were going to be given the CEO role at Applebee's and you weren't. So instead of, based on what I can find, making a big production about it or going to the papers with that or, being on a podcast saying anything about that. Instead, you just became the CEO of IHOP and then bought Applebee's. You just took it over. Was the irony of that? Did you sit at home and have some champagne, look what just happened? Or are you too classy for that?
So it is true that I went to Applebee's and was promised once I turned the business around because it had not been doing well. And once I did that with a great team that I surrounded myself with, that I would become the CEO. So after it had been about 3.5 years, I went in one day to the then chairman and CEO's office and showed the graph and showed the fact that we had done everything. I was so proud of the team. And it was really amazing what we had done. And he said, no, not going to make you the CEO. And I thought he meant, well, not today. So in my own naivete, I suppose, I took out my book and I started taking notes saying, what would you like me to demonstrate? What do I need to show you? And he said, no, I'm never going to make you the CEO. And when I said, why? He said, well, I don't have to have a reason. So I went home and thought about that. And the next day I said, I really think I'm going to have to go because I just don't think this is the right place, that I'm going to do the work, but not get the acknowledgement, especially after all that we have been through. And he said, well, you can't quit because if you quit, the stock will decline. So if you think about that for a minute, that's kind of an interesting statement. So eventually I did leave. I went looking for another position. And obviously a couple of months later found the CEO job at IHOP, which is probably one of my all-time favorite organizations. It really was just, it in some ways had not changed from when I worked there as a food server. It was this great family of people who reached out and cared about you and made a difference, right? So I couldn't have been happier, but I knew going in that there would be a turnaround. Once the turnaround was complete and we were printing cash. We had so much money on the balance sheet. I went to the board of directors and said, we are going to have to find an acquisition. I mean, we simply are going to be ripe for a takeover because we have all this cash. They absolutely said, of course. We went looking, and it was like a needle in the haystack, I remember at the time, because we were looking for something very specific, couldn't find anything. And truly, as the story goes, 6 months later, I was reading in the Wall Street Journal that Applebee's was having a difficult time and was considering everything, including the sale of the company. I called the bankers and I said, look, I know that maybe there is this uncomfortableness, but I would love to talk to you. One thing led to another. We eventually borrowed the money, $2.6 billion, and made the purchase of Applebee's, becoming, with the combination of Applebee's and IHOP, the largest sit-down restaurant chain in the world with the name Dine. And so interestingly enough, when I made the acquisition and everything was complete, on the day the deal was done, I had to call that gentleman and thank him for his service, but he would be no longer needed. Now, when I got off that phone, was there maybe 30 seconds of feeling good? Yes. But you don't borrow $2.6 billion to get even or revenge, but it really was the right thing at the right time. And if you really think about it, nobody knew Applebee's better than I did because I had worked there. So everything was meant to be. But yes, it is the truth, and it's a heck of a story. And there's, I think, a lot of people who get inspired by the notion of quietly do what's right.
I love that. Quietly do what's right. Because again, you could have made that a spectacle, and you could have made that phone call, a very uncomfortable and embarrassing conversation. And I suspect that you just told him what was happening and hung up the phone and had your moment. And then you had a job to do, and
Right.
People were holding you accountable with that kind of money on the line.
The largest casual dining restaurant chain in the world. And then we're the largest family dining restaurant chain in the world. And I'm trying to combine the two, yes, with different locations and corporate headquarters and cultures and people. Yes, probably the thing I'm most proud of in terms of just physically getting something done. It was a real effort. But again, I surrounded myself with a great team that was able to do it and then some. So timing is everything, and certainly a great team helps.
I'm sure people tell you all the time that would make a great story for your book, but where's your book?
I'm thinking about it. My husband is an accomplished author and has encouraged me more than once to do this. And I think it's about timing and sequencing. I'm a little preoccupied with my new venture, but eventually I might actually write the book, because I actually think it would help people, to remind them that you can go from, nothing to something and work hard, and that's still that wins out the day.
And to be honest with you, I've done a lot of reading of entrepreneurial stories, and we have an internal at this company development school, and I want to make sure that there's representation in the authors, gender and race and background and culture. And it's really difficult to find a female authored memoir story book of someone who went from nothing to the top of her game. There just seems to be a lot more authors out there, men, doing it. So I encourage you to do it.
I'm up for the task.
All right. So let's talk about what you're doing now, because you said you're preoccupied and you started something, and that is a different kind of challenge than coming in and turning something around. So tell us what you're doing now.
So it starts with, as I said, and you knew, I had been in the hospitality industry for more than 40 years. And that entire time I was always concerned about reducing risk and providing options for customers. That was really the focus, whether it was a better for you menu, the Weight Watchers program we did at Applebee's, reducing portion size, which we did at both companies, less sugar, less salt, less calories. It was always providing choices. And what was important is that I would create this clear vision for franchisees, not just the what, but the why. So people understood it wasn't just we were arbitrarily and capriciously doing this, but it really did matter. And we were really helping consumers' lives. So fast forward, I have left Dine after almost 20 years. And at that very same time, my mother began to show cognitive issues. And as an only child, and I'm the only one really around as a family member, I go get her diagnosed, and it becomes a clear case of pretty extreme dementia. And the doctor said to me, your job is to keep your mother comfortable and in no pain. But it literally led to this notion of, how did it get here? What were the choices my mother made? What is this notion of wellness? And so I began to think about starting my own business and this notion of providing choices that my mother really didn't have, which was information, services, products, vetted by doctors and experts, guiding on a wellness journey, all in one hub. And so I did a tremendous amount of research, both quantitative and qualitative research, interviewed a ton of people, and started Alurx. And that idea really came to life. So becoming full circle, because I spent my whole career managing and helping franchisees and entrepreneurs, and I became one myself.
Is it what you thought it would be?
Never been asked that question. It's interesting you say that. In some ways, yes, I think people are like, oh my gosh, she goes from this large corporate entity to sitting at her little desk in her office and doing her own thing with a small group of wonderful teammates. And the answer is, in some ways, yes. I think the thing that is most surprising to me is being able to get the word out, because obviously when I ran Dine, I had $250 million in marketing budget a year. And so you go from $250 million to, a nano of money to be able to communicate. So I think that's been not so much that I didn't anticipate it, it's just working through that. But I think the biggest thing that's been interesting and surprising has people investing in the company, and the kind of people who have been interested in investing in this business, and just some of the feedback and some of the comments and some of the, just an interesting way people think about how would a successful executive start her own company, and what was she thinking? It's just been an interesting observation of how people put their own spin, if you will, on this notion of, I'm really doing something to help others. This is all a vision of love. This is all about a mission to make a difference in people's lives. And it's just interesting when you start talking to people and you're out there hustling for money every day, who have some interesting questions about why would someone want to do that? And, you need to demonstrate a whole bunch more before I'd ever give you money. It's just not what I'm used to, obviously, because I was raising billions, not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And now you're in this whole new world and people see you in sort of a different way. Kind of interesting.
Do you get the question that I think is so fascinating that, so why aren't you retired? Or you could be sitting on a beach somewhere. Why are you doing, this feels hard. Do you get that a lot?
Yeah, pretty much every day. Mm-hmm. And I think people are so interesting to me that they look at me and say, why would somebody like you want to go back into the rat race and work this hard? And I said, because it's my passion. It's what I've always sort of thought about in terms of helping people and making a difference in their lives. And I really want to do this. So I'll put my own money and certainly get other investors' money. And we're going to be very successful. And we'll look back on all this and kind of giggle, right? That how did people say, oh my gosh, what was she thinking when she started her own business? And you want to point people to all of these companies started somewhere with an entrepreneur, most likely. If you go all the way back to the beginning, what were people doing? They were starting these businesses. That's the American dream. The American dream is to start your own company. So it's just interesting to me that there is this sort of strange notion that why would anybody want to work that hard? And of course, my answer is I do. So let's go make it work. But yes, I get that question pretty much every day.
It's too bad people don't shift that question, because if they were to ask you, why do you want to keep helping people? The whole question is reframed, and suddenly who would say, well, I'm done. I want to be selfish now. Helping people and serving people is in your blood. That's what you've done since you were a teenager.
That's right. It's really, you said it better than I. I mean, the truth of the matter is, why would anyone think that somebody who gave their whole life to helping and serving others would suddenly one day say, I'm just going to go sit on a beach and I'll start the margarita at 4. I don't know why anyone would automatically make that. This is what brings me happiness. But I don't ever get, it's funny, I don't get asked that question.
And if someone were to ask that question in a different way, what they're really asking you is they're inferring actually that you did your other jobs just for the money.
Right. Which
is offensive.
Which is offensive. And the truth of the matter is, I used to always say, it's absolutely a privilege to be able to lead. I take that so seriously. If you go back to my childhood and I talk about this notion of whether it was leading the neighborhood or whatever it was that I was doing, I always thought of it as an honor and a privilege. And for me, that was the difference. And I grew up, and both my parents were teachers. I grew up in an academic environment. And so you couldn't think of something in some ways so far, yet so close, right? Because you're making a difference, right? My dad used to always say, teaching is a noble profession. I said, Pop, I teach every day. I just don't do it in a classroom. I mean, I'm making a difference. I'm just not teaching in a classroom. I'm helping, I'm mentoring, I'm coaching. And actually, my dad, before he passed away, did actually tour with me one day when we were going to visit Taco Bell's. And at the end of the day, with literally tears in his eyes, he said, I owe you an apology. You do teach. You're just not doing it in a classroom. So, my notion of giving back and making a difference and providing skill set and knowledge to others, transferring it, is real. It's just not doing it in the same way.
Teaching and serving and helping can look a lot of different ways, just depending upon how you're gifted and your background and just where you're planted, frankly.
Exactly.
So talk a little bit about specifically what products you have, where people can find them. We'll put a link on the website, but I was on the website earlier, and it really comes back to even you in when you were in the CEO roles and the chair roles about wellness. And wellness is this holistic part. It's not just going for a run in the morning. It's a lifestyle. And your mother, of course, spurred that. But talk about exactly what you're hoping how you can impact someone's life.
So I was very blessed that I was able to do this from the very beginning, very early on, before any products. We did a fair amount of quantitative research, and we talked to consumers literally as the pandemic started on a similar situation on a screen virtually, and started talking to them about this big idea and what kinds of things would interest them. And as long as I live, I will never forget this. And thankfully, we have the video of it. But we literally had consumers from all over the country, young and old, from literally east and south and west, saying, let me get this right. You're going to create a wellness hub where I've got information and products and services, and you're going to guide my wellness journey. And I don't have to spend all day on Google looking for a product or a service, and you're going to do it all for me. And you're going to vet it through experts and medical doctors. Sign me up. So that was what really motivated me to say, okay, I'm onto something here across the country. And they had no idea that at that point, we didn't have a name of the company. We didn't know it was Alurx. People just got excited about the idea. And I've done consumer research for many years. I've never seen a response like this. So that's what got me excited. And then it was this notion of researching, well, what kinds of products will we like? And the answer is we want the traditional and the innovative and new. So we wanted things that people knew and thought of when they thought of wellness products, but also what's out there, whether it's technology, the ring that you can put on your finger and it suddenly tells you how well or poorly you slept last night. That interests me. And then giving a ritual to what you do. So when you go to bed every night, what kinds of things can we provide you in terms of education, information, services, and products that help guide you through sleep or immunity, or you have a particular thing you want to work on? We really wanted to go after that. And so we have begun, and it's a very big idea, right? Because you're talking about the full gamut of 12 need states, and you're thinking about all the products and services. So we launched with 22 products, and many of them were immunity-based or sleep-based, better for your skin, created a healthy glow, or they were good for inside coming out, and they provided a calm or a gentleness to whatever your day was. So we began to investigate each and every one of those products and worked with people across the globe, not just in the US, on finding the best products. So it was a ton of testing and finding products that really did work and that had the strongest efficacy, the best ingredients. And it ended up being more of a prestige products because of the cost of finding the best ingredients. So we've got the effervescent tablets, which you take every day, which I do, which provides you just sort of this healthiness that they're fighting anything out there that, may be in the air or the atmosphere, or, the common cold or whatever. So it's providing immunity. Or we created sleep products. One of the big sleep products that we sell is tea, which is the most complicated thing I've ever made because it involves literally 9 steps in making this tea that you literally steep in hot water and eventually will quietly help you sleep. I mean, it's been wonderful in terms of finding the right products, the skincare products. I mean, I could go on forever. Products that help you with your nails staying hard because they've got collagen, or the services that help guide you through exercise or yoga. So exercise, the traditional, yoga, the less traditional. And then me, I've become sort of this guru and experimenting every day, trying something every single day and feel better than I've probably ever felt because I'm creating this not only ritual for myself, but then obviously for others. It isn't about me. It's about really genuinely helping people. And it makes my day when somebody emails me or calls me and says, "Oh my gosh, I tried your product and it's changed my life." I'm like, okay, I'm in. That works for me.
If there's anyone listening who's interested in being an entrepreneur, and when you talk about what your vision is and you don't sound as excited as Julia does, don't do it. Because it's too much work. When I talk about my business and what we do, it's so exciting because
Yes.
I just love it so much. And if you're getting into business because you think it's going to be easy, you're going to make money, or you're going to IPO or whatever, and you don't have the spark and the passion, go work for someone else because it's too much work. You need to have that kind of passion. And it's so amazing to hear you talk about it and just you light up, even through just people who are listening and can't see your face right now.
Well, trust me, it is my passion. It's my life's work. And I think the last 40 plus years prepared me for this, I think in the most genuine way, so that, no means maybe. So when the investor says no, I'm thinking in my head, that means maybe. So it's this whole new notion for me of, I just, and I really always had the tenacity. Somebody asked me where that comes from. I think it's just in my wood, as I like to say, but this notion of I intend to bring this to as many people as possible, as fast as possible, is for me as good as it gets. And
if you don't believe it, just watch her do it.
Exactly. Right now it's a DTC platform. So you go Alurx, ALURX.com, and then we start the journey with you. Eventually, there'll be lots more products, lots more services. We'll be able to do a lot more as we build this hub with proprietary technology that enables us to give it just to you. So eventually our website recognizes you, Kristi, guides you through your wellness journey, and helps you along.
I'm signing up for this thing because you mentioned the ring and the Aura ring. I'm wearing it. I love my Aura ring. I'm a super nerd about, how can I just, if I could improve my health, wellness, just one notch, what would that do for my life? What would that do for the people I serve and I help and my family? So I love the concept of taking your wellness journey. It's not like overnight you're a new person tomorrow, but how do you just notch it up and continue to get better as we age?
It's absolutely the case. And if I do it right, you stay with us from the time you're young to the time you're not so young. And for me, it's that journey and helping you. And you're obviously educating as a consumer, you're educating us as you see new things. I literally had someone send me an email saying, "I want you to try this item. I thought of you." And I'm like, okay, that's as good as it gets.
So is this your, I don't want to say last, but is this the thing that you're doing right now? And do you have plans for the next thing? Or you mentioned this is your life's work. Is this, or are you open to see what the next thing is? Because I don't think you're someone who is going to sit on a beach and not find, and if you do sit on a beach, you're helping all the people around you, and you're probably going to the community and helping them in the morning and at night when you're not sitting on the beach.
It really is true. I was in a restaurant the other day and I gave coaching and realized, Julia, you actually don't work here. But this poor hostess really needed coaching and she thanked me profusely. And later on, the manager came up and said, I understand you gave my hostess some coaching. I said, I felt so bad for her. Anyway, I would say it is my life's journey. And so I see this as is forever somehow being involved, even if it's not forever and forever, I'll always be involved with Alurx and always giving back. And if that book is in my future, this is an important part of it, because now that I have done this, I realize all that I did for my life set me up for this opportunity. And I do view it as an opportunity of a lifetime.
Thank you for sharing your story. There's so many young women particularly who just don't have access to stories like this and right. Don't hear, like, what's it really like to go from working at the restaurant to running the restaurant to running all the restaurants in whatever industry you're in, because it takes intentionality, it takes hard work, yes. It takes dedication, and it takes passion. You got to love what you're doing or find something that you do love.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, listen, if you feel like you've hit the glass ceiling or you aren't in a place that's supportive of you, in this day and age, you need to find something else. There are so many opportunities out there for eager, creative, thoughtful, caring people. Please go find another position in another company. There's just no reason, whether you're working for an entrepreneur or you're working for a corporation, there's just no need today to be stifled or feel like you're dead-ended or you've hit the glass ceiling, which occasionally I did feel that way. And so it was like, you know what? I'm going to go somewhere else where my value is valued.
And that fits into your life's work and your personal passion, because that is so critical in success.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
As we wrap up the podcast, I could talk to you all day, but I know you're changing the world one person at a time, so I don't want to keep you from that important work. Is there a quote, something you could share with us that has motivated you as your life has continued to iterate as you've helped people?
So for me, one of the most memorable quotes that I ever heard will always be Ted Kennedy quoting his slain brother Bobby at his funeral. And he said, "Some men see things as they are and say, why? I dream things that never were and say, why not?"
Fantastic. What a powerful way to end. Thank you for sharing your story, Julia. I can't wait to read your book someday, and I'm going to try your products.
That made my day, Kristi. Thank you. It was an honor. Thank you very much.
A few things that Julia said that I want to mention again as we wrap up. It costs nothing to say please and thank you to someone. And you can make someone's day anywhere, wherever you are. It costs nothing, and it can make such a big impact. And no matter what you're doing, no matter where your life takes you, quietly do what is right. My hope is Julia's story empowers you to believe you're capable of more than you think, to discover motivation, to uncover inspiration, and to find the strength to turn the page.
Thank you for listening to Flip Your Script, hosted by Kristi Piehl and produced by Media Minefield. If you like our message, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to the show, and share our episodes with your family and friends. Do you or someone you know have a story about flipping your script? We'd love to share it. Contact us on our website, flipyourscriptpodcast.com. To stay up to date on all things Flip Your Script, make sure to follow host Kristi Piehl on social media. You can also check out the website for pictures, resources mentioned in the show, and other great episodes.